Hi everybody, welcome to March 2017. So what we have going on this month that's of note is the Venus retrograde cycle that starts up officially during the month of March, although there's this period beforehand where you might feel it the few weeks before. The themes could already show up around Venus and Venus retrograde. Especially it's a little more impactful this time around. It happens once every year and a half, but this year it has a little more significance because of its opposition to Jupiter. You've got Mars in the mix, you've got Uranus in the mix. There's a lot of other stuff that it's kind of pinging off of, so it's amplified. It's like when you throw a little rock into a still lake and all these ripples happen. It's a little more amplified. And what if there are two little pebbles thrown in at two locations? They amplify and then the ripples flow into one another, and then they create more stuff going on, more pattern in your life, but more texture in your life. What if there are three little pebbles in three different locations and all their ripples ripple out and then meet, and then there's all this pattern that's more complex and there's more going on. So it's sort of like that, kind of, but in real life. So themes that have to do with Venus are, some of the biggies. There are lots of themes around Venus, but two of the big ones that stand out that people maybe notice the most would be legal issues of fairness and justice. So it may not be the law specifically. You may not be in a court case, and you may not be a lawyer or a paralegal or something, but you could have a traffic ticket, or you may be going to court for some reason, or subpoenaed to court. It may be that, but it's also just issues of fairness and justice in general. So it may not be in a court of law or involve legal representation or anything like that, but it may not involve legal paperwork. But there's the issues of fairness and justice, I would say, and they're amplified this year because of Jupiter, which is also has this sense of justice and legality around it. So when you got these two together, and the oppositional Jupiter from, it's in opposition to this Venus retrograde, is in Libra, which also has to do with fairness and justice. You've got a lot of fairness and justice issues going on. So it has a little more resonance, and you're likely to see it more around you in society as well as in your own life. So it's bigger and more personal too at the same time. Another biggie, kind of obvious way to go with the symbolism is into romance. And Venus is a personal planet, meaning it can represent people often. So it could be that you're in a romance and there's some bigger thing going on, like you're reviewing your relationship, you're thinking about it in a different way, you're putting on the pause button. There's a bit of a review. Maybe you try it again, something again with a person. Then a person from the past could come in. These retrograde planets sometimes bring up a past issue, or a person from the past. It's rehashing the past sometimes. So that could be either between two people who are in a current relationship, or someone literally from the past can come into the frame, sometimes personally or just the idea of them. But it's expanded this year because of Jupiter, and because Jupiter's in Libra, there are expanded relationship issues, lots of relationship issues. And they go beyond the romantic in this case because of all the other stuff going on. It's a little larger and can go beyond romance, but there are relationship issues, and what's fair? What is truly just? The question might come up for someone, have I been fair? Am I being fair? Am I seeing all sides? So it's better with paying attention to astrology. It's really easy always in life and in astrology to think, you're right, because the other person isn't being fair and they need to see my side. And that's really easy for all of us to do. We all do it. I fall into everybody. So it's human nature. Immediately we're going to recognize that's so true, because they're being so, that's just not just over there. Those people making that unjust, and meanwhile, we're not considering ourselves. It's better, it's more fruitful overall, and you get more progress with the stuff, the issues going on, if you can invite in. And these two retrogrades, because we've got a Jupiter retrograde too, these two retrogrades can help people take a little more consideration of their own behavior, their own part in something, how they could review their position and begin to review it from the lens of blind justice. So Libra is blind justice, and Libra is blind justice. I was about to do like a combination of Jupiter and Venus and say genus, but it's really Venus and Jupiter, but Venus plays into it and Jupiter. So the sense of justice is huge. And there's also this idea of blind justice is impartial. So blind justice does not take sides, does not consider a political side, or what, like if you think of justice as a person, embodied by a person, that person would have to truly look at all sides, everything considered, and make the wisest, most just, fair choice. It's a higher kind of justice. It's not an eye for an eye. It's not emotional in nature. It's a very, it's got this air quality of Libra. But it also, oddly, it's combined with the fire and Mars in Aries. So there's a sense of either or. Either you can go be very emotional and be kind of have like a sense of retribution and a sense of punishing people, or there's but writ large here is this idea that's blooming around this eye for an eye thing, but the larger principle that's circling around and wants to be noticed is the ideal of having, especially from a societal point of view, but even among people more personally, a sense of being fair in an impartial sense, which immediately takes the emotion out. Unless you're one of those people who fervently emotionally believes in blind justice. Like I would be in that camp. Anybody who has a lot of Libra or Venus in their personality, so it would include Taurus as affiliated with Venus, Libra, and anybody with a strong Venus might more emotionally believe and feel the need for impartial justice and fairness. So some people it's more emotional, but a lot of people it's not, because there is this, the opposite end of the spectrum. This Mars in Aries wants to say, eye for an eye, and let's get a mob together and get in a mob mentality and go do something that's very emotional. So these are the things playing off one another again in your own life and around you in a bigger way. In love, this can just play out in so many different ways, but it depends on where you are in life and what's happened in your past. If you're in a current relationship, I imagine there's some kind of review of where you are. Some people may take a little break. Some people might do a little trial balloon. What is a trial balloon? It means you kind of test the relationship, like test a new way of being together. You put out little feelers, which means not in a creepy way, but you put out you try something gently before you jump in. It's like little tests to see, does this work, or can we actually talk now? Can we have a conversation? What if I tried this approach? What if we took a little break? It's just like testing, It's also about healing. There's a sense of healing here that can happen. And so for all signs, wherever this is going on for you, there's a sense that you can heal a relationship and you can heal something that was really patently unfair. You can heal that. You can never go back and make it fair. Well, I can never say never. Maybe in a legal sense you can go back and try to make it right again. That's one legal idea, is like making a person whole again. So legally sometimes you can do that by giving them money, so they get a sense of fairness around something unjust. Interpersonally, it's a it's more conceptual. It's more the way that people feel. So sometimes just by apologizing to somebody, you're making it right. Sometimes that heals it. Sometimes that makes it better. Sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the people. But there's this idea of healing, the potential for healing, especially if you can see more than your side. If you can really look at more impartially at what happened and get out of your own skin, out of your own ego, sometimes you're able to see both sides long enough to have a little bit of healing. And it may not totally heal a relationship that was damaged, but sometimes you can see that you're inching forward toward healing. So it just depends on where you are, who's involved, but sometimes this is a great opportunity for some healing for some people, depending on the people and how willing they are to see more sides. So I would encourage you in this month to try to take that sense of blind justice in love and in other areas, and try to see more sides, try to see what's truly fair, what's truly just, without emotion involved. Because our emotions sometimes are like especially quick anger emotions, a sense of retribution, that they may not be that reliable in terms of seeking out fairness and true justice. You may think it's just in the moment, but maybe it with the long view, not so just. So anyway, consider that as we go through the signs, and I hope you have a lovely month. Take care. Hi Aries, so let's look at Venus retrograde for you this month. So in March, we have some Aries birthdays, so happy birthday. And, with that comes along, with it a sense of increased energy, and you will have Mars coming in and giving you a lot more energy along with the Sun. But let's look at this Venus retrograde. So Venus will be in your sign. So as you kick off the month, you have this kind of charisma. You got a lot of charisma this month. And when Venus goes retrograde, it doesn't necessarily take away your charisma, but some of you may come across like Mars and the Sun may dominate a little bit more. And Venus may become a little recessive. So what does that mean? It depends on what is going on in your life and where you need. Sometimes we need our Mars energy. We need to move forward more assertively. Now Mars can go beyond assertive to aggressive. Now, in certain situations in life, it's really important to have that ability to use your Mars energy. If you are in a dangerous situation, that's literally dangerous. Like a bear has entered your house, an angry mama bear, and you're holding the baby bear, and trying to hurt the baby bear. That's dangerous, and you need to use your Mars to figure that out. You need to, it's fight or flight. I'd run. So that's when Mars, the extreme version of Mars, is appropriate. Now, generally speaking, we don't need that kind of angry, impulsive Mars. We don't need that as much. And in fact, it's better to have a way to temper it. And that's where Venus can help all of us. It softens, it balances the equation. And there's a lot here about balance during this Venus retrograde, as said in the introduction, where I go over a lot of detail around the themes and what to be thinking about. So I encourage you to listen to the introduction. Even though it adds 9 minutes, I would go listen to it. Maybe it's more than 9 minutes, but it seemed like it was around 9 minutes. Anyway, the introduction helps you kind of consider this more completely. But across from you, Aries, you've got Libra sitting in your 7th house of relationships, close business relationships and love relationships, and even sometimes friendships and frenemies. People with whom you have this sort of bond, that pits you together or against each other in a setting. And so with Jupiter over there, this whole idea, this idea of relationship is amplified. And it can be a legal relationship, and I talked in greater detail about that in the introduction. There's so much of a legal nature here and sense of fairness and justice. Within a personal relationship with a significant other, like a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend, even an ex, sometimes exes come in here, especially with two retrogrades. You could see exes crop up, and sometimes old issues of what was fair at the time. In the past, was there something unfair or unjust that happened to one of you or both of you? I would say this is an opportunity for healing, but that means it doesn't just happen magically if nobody does anything. It means that one can consider, did the fairest thing happen in this case? Or is there a huge imbalance in the outcome of whatever occurred? So it just depends on the situation. In a divorce situation, did one person walk away with all the money? Is that fair? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. I would say in many cases that sounds a little unfair, but it just depends on the situation. Now is a time when one can either make it fair by balancing that financial equation, or just have some interpersonal healing between the two of you. Can you seek to, can you inch toward healing the emotional unfairness, that sense of emotional injustice or emotional wound? Can you inch toward healing that? But other than money, there are other things that can be unfair. Did someone really end up with the short end of the sticks? Was that truly fair, that person got hammered so completely, and another person just kind of was totally unbruised by the whole thing? Is in no way does that seem fair. So we can't go back and really change the past, but certainly, especially if the party whoever kind of walked away unscathed, or whoever walked away with more money, or whoever has a sense that the other party was a little more wounded, has an opportunity to be magnanimous, be generous of spirit, or maybe even generous with money. Who knows? It just depends on the situation. But just as much, the person who was wounded has an opportunity to release some of that woundedness by really doing a lot of personal work. But it's better for the person who was wounded to see how much they can let go. How much can they let that go? Was it fair? No. But can you let go some of that woundedness? Sometimes you can do that all by yourself with doing your own work, but it helps a lot if the other party can enter the frame, as it appears is happening this month, where people come in from the past or past situations come up, and both parties have an opportunity to move toward healing. And I don't know how this happens, to be very individual. There are many scenarios going on here, but there's an opportunity for healing. I say move toward that. Do as much as you can to release the past and move toward healing if that's your issue. Now, if there's a new relationship cropping up during this time, somebody new comes in under a retrograde, it's got a different energy to it, and I would be impartial, like blind justice. In a romantic sense, it's stepping back and getting a sense for how balanced this relationship appears, and giving it enough time to see where the balance is. It a balanced partnership? Is this person in a relationship? So do they balance you out, or are they like, does something seem off kilter? And you may need some time to figure that out. And I talk more in detail in the intro about timelines, but that's a new relationship is a little, it's unusual in this case, and because of the two retrogrades, and I would be a little, I would attempt. It's harder with the stuff going on here in your, for you personally, you've got a lot of passion and energy. So it could well be that you're the one being a little more passionate and forward and giving more, and the other person may be in like taking. Be careful of that, I would say, for you. All right. Have a great month. Take care. Hi, Taurus. Welcome to March 2017. So, we're looking at Venus retrograde because that's the biggest thing going on. There's a lot of other stuff going on. Actually, when I'm talking to you, I'm taking into account a lot of it, but I'm focusing on Venus retrograde. So I'm actually looking at other aspects and things going on throughout the month. But I'm talking to, we're kind of discussing it through the lens of a Venus retrograde. So anyway, in the introduction, it's important to listen if you really want to understand more of the details of this. I give you some setup and background and more information in the intro, so I don't have to repeat it 12 times. So I highly recommend going back and listening to that so you get more detail on this, so I don't have to explain it again, because I'll burn up a lot of minutes if I try to do that. But you've got the retrograde happening in your 12th house, which is an interesting area to have it, happen. So we did talk last month, I think, about how you've got Uranus back here in your 12th house too, and there's a lot going on mentally. There's some mental agitation and a lot of brain activity and even emotional. This is also your emotional landscape under kind of behind the scenes, what's going on with your emotional landscape. And your mental activity and emotions are very much connected. Your mental activity can impact your emotions. So with Venus retrograde, normally Venus coming through here would soften a little bit some of the activity and make it a little more pleasant back there in your head. And maybe even soften and bring in a little balance to your emotion, a little more balance to your thoughts. And that's happening too. However, with a retrograde and it being kind of in opposition to Jupiter, which is down in your 6th house, and some of the other stuff going on, I would say that there's definitely stuff from the past coming up for you, because we've got 2 retrogrades here kind of pinging off of each other, and it has a lot to do with your health and wellness, and that includes your mental health and wellness and your emotional health and wellness. And with the 2 retrogrades, there's a need to find balance here, and a need to feel also a sense of fairness. So whatever is going on for you in your personal life with relationships, this could be at work, with friends, romantically, it tends to be more platonic. People who are more platonic, it depends on what your chart is like, but it could be romantic. It could be people at work. Is everything fair? What are relationships like at work? What's bothering you about them? What's bothering you about platonic relationships? But even in romance too, where is there a sense of fairness and justice? And there's also this strong theme of beginnings and endings. So if something ended badly in the past, this could be in a job, with a friend, if something ended badly in romance, it could be that emotionally and very much in your thoughts and kind of back in your subconscious and even unconscious mind, these issues are getting kind of percolating and bubbling up to the top, and it may be keeping you up at night. Your dreams may be more active. So the person from the past could show up in your dreams, or they could show up in real life, or they could just show up in your thoughts. Like you're suddenly thinking about something in the past, or it could be maybe in your current relationship, something that happened in the past, and it's needing on an emotional and health level. It's as though, so I'm trying to reach a broad audience here, so it's going to be different people for different ones of you, and so I'm trying to describe what it feels like inside. So inside, it feels like something isn't sitting right. So it could be that you feel that something's been unfair for you, that there's a sense of injustice, and you need to probably to feel better emotionally and even in your health, because your emotions can start to impact your health in a negative way and in a positive way too, depending, is the emotion more negative or positive. So if you're anxious or worried, or you feel bad or guilty about something, that can start to impact your health and definitely impact the kinds of dreams you have and the kind of quality of sleep you have and your general sense of well-being. So if something isn't sitting right, because there's a sense, I would think emotionally, of something not sitting right, and you've been on the short end of the stick, and it was unfair for you, it may be time to speak up. With Mars coming into your sign, it may be time to speak up for yourself and be a little more assertive, and try to right the balance in that way. You may need to speak up for yourself. For some of you, it may be that because the reason you're so agitated internally is that you realize that maybe you're the one who needs to make reparations. Maybe you're the one who needs to try to make it right with the other person. Maybe you're the one who needs to take action, because with Mars you take action to heal this. Because there's this huge opportunity for healing this month, especially relationships and old relationships. So if there was a big bad ending in the past, it could be that you need to take action. In either case, you're taking an action to try to heal and to make it more balanced and to make it sit right with you emotionally, like it sits right with you or it's not sitting so right. So it's bringing things back into balance somehow. So it's either you speaking up because something needs to work better for you, or you taking action to make it better for the other person in some way. Sometimes it's just saying I'm sorry, if you want like a clear example. Sometimes it's just saying I'm sorry. I'm really sorry this happened, and I know you got the short end of the stick, or you weren't necessarily in the wrong, and I realize, I don't know, it depends. I can't put words in your mouth, but I'm just sometimes just as much as saying I'm sorry, or sometimes just being kind to someone else when they need it will heal a situation at work, with friends, and in love. Sometimes just knowing that you can heal the relationship helps. Knowing that you can heal the relationship is that's a possibility, and I think it's a big possibility right now. It's been weighing. Something may have been weighing on you. You've had Saturn in this 8th house, and it's working in a lovely way with all the stuff I've been talking about. Saturn gives you an opportunity to heal something that maybe is an embarrassment, something that was hidden from view, something that's weighed on you psychologically. It may be a money imbalance. It may be just, could be more sexual. So it could be, this is where like the non-platonic, more of a love relationship comes into play because of this 8th house placement. It could be, in a sexual relationship, something happened, a bad ending happened, and maybe you need to just, for you to heal, or maybe even for the other person to heal, you need to say something on your behalf, or you're apologizing. It just, whatever. And sometimes it's not that you need to apologize. It may not be that at all. It may just, but in some way you can find more balance with this, with the other person. I don't know. Like we'd really have to talk individually to figure it out, but you get the idea. All right, so I hope you have a lovely month. Chance for healing, guys. Hi, Gemini. Welcome to March 2017. First, I'm going to highly recommend that you go back and listen to the first 9-10 or so minutes of my introduction, because I go into more detail that helps put some of this in perspective. I'll probably repeat some of it here, but if you want more perspective, go back and listen to that. So during March, we have Venus retrograde. I'm really going to look at March through that lens. I'm looking at other stuff too, but I'm really focusing more on the Venus retrograde piece of your chart. So it's very much about relationships. And to get a wider view of that, go back to this first, the introduction at the beginning. But where it's hitting your chart specifically, it's hitting the 11th house and the 5th house, but it's also impacting the 10th house and the 4th house. So with a retrograde, with this particular Venus retrograde, there is this sense of beginnings and endings. It's not always true for every retrograde, but for this one in particular, there's some pretty significant themes around beginnings and endings. So the endings and beginnings may not take place during this retrograde because there's this issue of things coming back from the past. What's just as likely, and maybe more likely, is that something began and ended in the past, or ended in the past, and comes back. This issue comes charging back or bubbling up for some kind of review and revisit. And so it could be because of the 10th house, eventually Venus, not during the month of March, but eventually will go into your 10th house and impact your 4th house as well. There could be an issue, a parental issue. So if you're a parent, that applies. If you have parents alive, even if they're not alive, it could be psychological stuff that comes up, but parental issues can come up. Things around your career, where you work, who's in charge, your boss, the structure. In a larger sense, this is also politically who's in charge of your town, who's in charge of your province or your state, who's in charge of your country. There are issues of leadership. Parenting, by extension, goes into leadership. So there's senses of the sense of parenting, leadership, and with Venus and Jupiter and Libra implicated, there's the sense of fairness and justice. So this can be at large around you. You'll see it more than likely going on around you, but it's also in your own life. If you got a raw deal in the past at your place of work, something bad ended badly at work for you a while ago, there's this opportunity for healing here. So sometimes healing just takes place inside of us. Nothing external has to occur. We can just heal internally, sort of organically, usually by working on something, doing some soul searching, doing some research, doing some therapy, who knows, but somehow within you can find healing about something from work, from the past, and even from parenting. Like if you got as a child, you felt like you got a raw deal and your parents were kind of crummy, or maybe they weren't crummy parents, but there were some things that happened that you felt were disadvantageous to you and hurt you. Sometimes you can just have internal healing. Now, sometimes it's beyond that. It's people from your family reaching out to you or somehow making it right, maybe through an apology, maybe through just being nice to you, and vice versa. Sometimes, let's say you were the parent or the boss that we're talking about. Let's say you're the boss and you treated someone unfairly in the past. This is your chance to go inward and see that with a little more impartiality, and maybe just within you heal some of that, because it hurts. Oddly, one can argue that it hurts. The oppressor is just as wounded as the oppressed in some way, especially on a soul level. The person who's oppressing clearly is doing huge damage to their kind of karmic self. Their more spirit part of them is getting hugely damaged by acting cruelly. They do way more to themselves in the long run and suffer in a way we can't always see. I know that's hard if you're the oppressed to see the oppressor as being wounded by it, but in some senses they're more wounded and you're more elevated because of that dynamic. But so from that point of view, if you've been the oppressor at work, if you recognize that you were hard on somebody or unfair and you were in the position of power, that can go inside and start to work on a person and eat away, especially if they have a stronger conscience somewhere within them, or they develop a conscience. That can be very painful to someone. To realize they were unfair to someone can really eat away at a person. And so if you're in that, standing in those shoes, forgive yourself first. And maybe there's a way to make it right for the other person, maybe not. Maybe too much time has passed. But I would say, kind of on an energetic, kind of soul level, if you can forgive yourself, somehow that will ripple out into the world, and maybe that other person will get some healing from that invisibly. Nobody can prove that, but it's a nice premise. And but so maybe work to forgive yourself. If you're the parent and you've done something that was really kind of unfair and you see it, maybe there's a way to make it right as much as possible now. You can't go back and change the past, but maybe you make it better in the present. Because in another way, we're looking at the 11th house and the 5th house. Again, we're looking at children, so again, if there's a child who's gotten an unfair deal, see if you can make it right. Just by changing your behavior, or doing whatever can be done to balance it. Also, because the 5th house rules romance, it could be that in romance something has been out off kilter, probably from a past relationship or a past dynamic. Something's been out of balance. So you could have been on the short end of the stick, but the other person could have been. So there's a chance for healing. The main thing to remember about March and April is there's a chance for healing here. The worst breakups, the worst endings from the past, oddly enough, are up for review now, and they have a chance to move into a stage of beginning of healing. Maybe it's not going to heal entirely. That may be too much to expect, but maybe there's a little baby step toward healing here. So try to remember that. So even if you're the one who behaved abominably, or you feel you really behaved wrongly, or now you see that the other person really was damaged or hurt somehow, that can be hard for someone to take in. That's especially if you're a parent. If you see the child was damaged by your behavior, that's a crappy way to feel. As a parent, that's going to eat away at you for the rest of your life. So it's good. At first, it's going to hurt, but then remember there's an opportunity for healing here, and that you can make it right, especially if you begin to forgive yourself, so that you can reduce that shame. Shame can get in the way of reaching out to another person because you feel so ashamed. If you can begin to forgive yourself and get rid of some of that shame, it actually makes you a better person and more able to make it right to the other. So sometimes that shame is what keeps us away from doing the right thing, because we feel so bad. It's good to recognize that that others that can happen to them. It can kind of put this wall of shame around them, and that's why they're not reaching out to you. So if you're in that position where you feel ashamed of something that hurt someone else, recognize that you can heal that. You can still make baby steps toward repairing something bad. And if you were the victim, the person who somebody you felt you got more damage than the other person in some exchange, you too can do some internal work to heal. So sometimes it's just within you can heal by doing a lot of work. And it makes you more open to receiving any kind of healing that other person can put out. So if they just are nicer to you, you're more willing to accept that, and it feels better. Or if they apologize, maybe you're more open to receiving that apology and getting some of the healing from that. Does it make what happened in the past better? You can't go back and change the past, but you can make your life better now. So consider that for March and into April, and have a great month. Hi Cancer, so welcome to your March 2017, and we're looking through the lens of Venus retrograde. So I know it's really tempting to go through and find the timestamp below, from the people who watched this and provided them, because I'm not always having the time to do it. It's really tempting to just jump right to your forecast to, jump to Cancer. But in the first 9 to 10 minutes or so, I give more of an overview. So if you really want to understand a little more detail here, and get a bigger frame of reference, go back and listen to that too. I do those for a reason. It's not just to hear myself talk. I really am trying to give a little preamble so that you're better able to take in what I'm saying now. So I encourage you to do that. So Venus retrograde is what's happening this month, and it's not completing its cycle this month. It's beginning its cycle, and so some of the stuff is going to dominate April as well, but it'll be kind of the wrapping up end of the cycle. So anyway, a big theme because of Venus, because of Jupiter in Libra, and some other things going on. A big theme is relationship healing, I would say. So and there's this idea of beginnings and endings, and I'm thinking more and more as I consider what's going on here, that there was a beginning and an ending in the past. But there's also a new beginning and the ending of a phase going on now. There can be new beginnings if. So the if is, can there be healing? And I think there's a great opportunity to heal relationships from the past. In your case, this kind of the relevant areas of your chart are at work, with bosses, or if you were the boss even, to heal it with your employees or past employees. There's a chance to heal family relationships, old relationships from when you were younger, with parents. There's an opportunity to heal relationships with parents, and an opportunity to heal relationships with universities. Within the legal system, there's an opportunity to repair something within the legal system. And with schools, oddly, or with teachers, or with students. So just think about your life. If you had a teacher who really got in your way, you feel like, or damaged you somehow in a school setting, there may be a chance to repair some of this. And I don't know how that's going to happen. It'd be very unique to you. It'd be a more detailed personal reading. But there's a chance for reparation. So maybe you could appeal to the school to consider what happened and give you a second, third, fourth chance. In a legal setting, same thing. Maybe in the past you got a ruling that was not in your favor, but now you could go back and get something more in your favor. Now, vice versa, if something was a little unfairly decided in your favor, something was unfairly decided in your favor in the past, you may find somebody else is coming back for reparation and healing. And it just depends. And so be careful and be open to try. The best thing here is to try for your own sake, not for the other person so much, but try to recognize if you were in a situation where something went way more unfairly in your favor, and at the time it felt good because it was in your favor. It always feels good when it's in your favor. There is a balance that can come around in life, and sometimes when you've just been on the receiving end of all the goodies, sometimes life wraps back around, and you've got to recognize that there's a balancing that needs to happen. So be cognizant of this. It's always better in the end to have, I think, and a lot of people would argue that it's better to have reparations occur, even if you need to concede something. So it's tricky. I mean, I don't know what your situation is, but if something went way in your favor before, you may even carry around a sense of shame and guilt somewhere inside of you, even though it feels good to win and you're glad you won. Somewhere inside you, you may know it was not right. You may know that it really wasn't fair, and people carry that like big rocks. If you ever watched, or read A Christmas Carol, they carry it around like a ball and chain, a sense of shame and guilt somewhere in their soul. They carry this, or you carry this. And so even if you've won something or gotten the better deal, that can weigh on a person. But maybe you're the person who didn't get a better deal, and that needs to be righted. It's your time maybe to speak out or to get reparation. It could come in a legal setting, it could come in a work setting, it could come in a family setting where a little balancing and justice needs to occur here within the setting, within the dynamics of these relationships. Some balancing and justice needs to occur, and some healing. So no matter which role you played, I would say if you've been the oppressed, the person who didn't get the good end of the deal, sometimes it's hard to, because we know we got the wrong end, we know we were right to feel wronged or whatever. Sometimes it's hard to get out of that position and be open to healing. Sometimes it's like, no, I got the wrong end of the deal. You oppressed me. You took everything. You were mean to me. You did the wrong thing. It was unjust toward me. Sometimes we can get so lodged in that position that we create a lack of healing for ourselves. We create a lack of reparations for ourselves by being stuck in that position. So it's good to try to be open during this time, these 2 months really, to some kind of softening of position here. Allow for some healing. Be willing to let healing happen. And, where it's hard for the person who got the better end, sometimes they're so ashamed. Deep down, there's like almost an unwillingness to deal with that. It can make it hard for that person who got the better deal to be open to making it right, because deep down there is a sense of shame and they just don't want to feel bad about themselves. So it makes it hard for them to get past that, to making it better. They get lodged in their position of winning, and sometimes people need to justify to themselves, like, I won because I was right. I got the better end of the deal because I'm the better person. Sometimes people can just self-justify. And are you the better person? Are we the better people if we win, or did we just win? So it depends on what you want to have happen. It depends on the people involved. Sometimes people don't want to heal. Sometimes people don't want to make reparations. Sometimes people don't want people to apologize to them. They don't want to accept an apology. So it just depends on the people and the personalities involved, but there is an opportunity for healing. So I say go for it. All right, take care. Hi, Leo. So we're talking about March 2017 and looking at March through the lens of a Venus retrograde as it relates to what's happening in Aries. It's going to eventually go back into Pisces because of the backward motion, and it's opposing Libra and Jupiter, and also a little bit toward the end it's going to oppose the area of Virgo in your chart. So we're looking at relationships, and I think some healing that can happen from the past is the way I'm really, if I had to boil it down. I think there's, and the past can be the recent past, the immediate past, or way back. So there's healing that can happen to unjust, imbalanced things that happened in the past. So they could be between people here. Where these are in your chart, this could be in a legal setting. There needs to be a balancing. So legal settings can include all kinds of things. Because eventually Venus will dip back into the 8th house, there could be a financial matter that was never really, or that has gotten out of balance somehow, and some sort of reparation, I would think, toward you needs to happen, because Venus will eventually go direct again in Pisces, which means usually a small grant or gift of money, or a reparation, a balancing of the scales financially, maybe with some legal paperwork involved and some kind of pressure applied. I think the scales get balanced in your favor eventually, maybe in April. I talk in the first 10 or so minutes of this forecast at the very beginning when I do the overview. I give you a little more scope and detail about more ways to think of this. So I highly encourage going back and listening, because you just get more detail and a better frame of reference for how this might apply to you and some of the larger concepts here. And I don't do that just to hear myself talk. I really am trying to teach you a little bit more about how to listen to this and how to get more from it. So I do encourage going back. Because there is this there's a sense of fairness and justice here. What's fair for you? Now, sometimes, in life, we do things that are unfair for the other person. Sometimes we mean to, sometimes we don't at all intend that. But sometimes through life, we might get more than we deserve in some setting, more power than we deserve, we get our way more than we deserve, and the other person doesn't get their way. We get more money than we deserve, and the other person gets less than they deserve. There's a sense of imbalance that's gone on in the past. And it just depends on you as to whether or not you've been sitting in the catbird seat, which is a saying that means you've been in the place of power and position and the receiving more somehow. And the other party, the other people out there, some other entity out there has gotten less than they deserve. Or you've been the person who really deserves more and you haven't gotten it. And I think there can be a balancing of the scales in March and in April. And so I would say, just on an internal, emotional, energetic level, try to do some work with yourself. If you've been injured in the past and things have been unfair, if you've been injured recently and something unfair has happened, begin to soften yourself toward receiving, because sometimes when something bad happens, we put up this resistance and we start to fight the other party. And the minute you put up resistance, it's like this energetic wall that you're putting up, because we want to protect ourselves. But if somebody got more money than they deserved, and you're wanting to receive more, or you think you deserve more, by putting up this energetic wall, it's like you kind of block, if you just picture it like energy, you kind of block anything coming in. You immediately protect yourself and you shield yourself from entry. So if money wants to come to you through at work or through taxes or I don't know, through the court system, sometimes we put up, without it meaning to, not knowing we've done it, a wall of resistance to more coming in. It can be a mental, emotional stance that kind of creates this weird dynamic where even though you've been the injured party, you further prevent yourself from healing or getting reparation by feeling defensive. It's sort of mind-bending, but it's true. You can see it usually when other people are the victim of this and put themselves in a victim stance. You can kind of see it with other people. Sometimes you recognize with others this dynamic where they're kind of preventing themselves from getting help. This can happen with you too. Oddly enough, it's harder to see, but this can happen with you too, where sometimes you prevent yourself from getting what you need, and you truly do deserve more of something, or more money. It could be more power, more verbal say so. Here, knowledge-wise, you might actually have more to offer, and people are not listening to you. So, there really may be some blockage here, but for it to get better, it's going to require you, if you're the one who is kind of in the victim stance, sort of, or the short end of the stick, you kind of need to find a way to dissolve those walls. And that can be really scary to do when one feels like one's on the defense. So it takes some internal work, but I would say try to soften. And with Venus and Jupiter working together, that's why I'm saying there's an opportunity for healing. So I'm not just saying you should heal. I'm saying there's this great opportunity here if you want to take advantage. But it involves softening. And with Venus, again, in the beginning, I described this a little bit more, but there's this idea of impartial justice and the idea of stepping back and being impartial. And when we're actively in victim mode, or I've been wronged, that's not an impartial point of view. It may be true, but when we emotionally attach to that, it's not impartial. Likewise, if you've been the recipient of more and you know you've gotten maybe the lion's share and you know it, that feels really good in the moment, maybe to win a lawsuit, to get more money than maybe you deserved. That can feel great, but somewhere inside of you, that can be a burden, an emotional, kind of a karmic burden, an energetic burden that you could be oblivious of, but it weighs you down. Somewhere, again, energetically, it may be imperceptible, but it weighs on your soul. I mean, if you've ever read the story, Christmas Carol, watched that movie, Marley, a character who dies and then comes back kind of to haunt the main character, is carrying around these huge, long chains from his past, this huge weight of, every link in the chain is something bad he's done in his lifetime. And we can do that to ourselves. We do it to ourselves. And to release those chains, we have to get past first we have to recognize that maybe we've gotten something unfairly. That comes first, is recognition. Being impartial enough just for a split second to recognize maybe we got more, we had the better end of the deal, another person suffered. Sometimes that's hard for somebody to get to that position. Sometimes it's really difficult. People don't want to see that always. It's not the thing that we always want to see. But by not seeing it, we're carrying those chains and we may not realize it till it's very late or too late. So it's better to try to recognize if we're carrying around guilt and shame somewhere deep inside of us that we don't even want to see. We will be better off if we can see that reparations need to be done to the other party, to the other person. The other person needs something from us, even if it's just a tiny apology. Sometimes an apology is so healing, not only for the person who says I'm sorry. It can be healing for the person who says I'm sorry, but for the person who gets the apology, if they're ready to hear it. It can be very healing. Just a simple apology can make a lot of stuff go away. So be thinking about that. And, this very much for you guys, it could be legal. Something legal happened in the past and healing can happen now. Or some kind of rebalancing. But also it's going to cut across a personal, interpersonal, something from the past that was shameful to someone or to both of you. Something that people really, there is this idea for Leos, there's something in the past that people really don't want to look at that could heal. But it's going to take people wanting to see the darker side of their own nature or being willing to forgive the darker side of someone else's nature. It's hard, it's not easy. It's easy to say, harder to do. But I highly recommend trying to do it, because even if you just make a teeny weeny baby step toward healing, it's worth it. All right, have a good month. Hi Virgo, so welcome to March 2017. We're talking about March through the lens of Venus retrograde. I'm taking into account, like when I'm looking at, I'm kind of always eyeing this chart off to the side. I'm looking at other stuff, but we're really focusing on this area of Venus retrograde. So in March, it's going to retrograde in Aries, and it's eventually in April going to go back into Pisces a little bit. But it's going over this very important part of the zodiac that I talk more about this in the introduction, the first 10 or so minutes. I highly recommend going to listen to that. It gives you a better frame of reference, so it's a lot more detail. But where this happens in your chart for you is in, it begins in your 8th house of finance and secrets, the darker side of life. Sometimes it's shameful stuff. Sometimes it's just intimacy, like a sexual relationship. Which doesn't have to be shameful, but there's this area of the 8th house which is sort of darker and hidden, and so it just depends on stuff that happened in your life that needs rebalancing, because there's this idea that something ended badly in the immediate past or the far past, and that I think there's an opportunity for healing and rebalancing. And because through the Venus retrograde, it goes back into your 7th house of long-term relationships, impacting, you more personally, beyond your money, beyond concepts of shame and or stuff to do with your intimate life. It goes into real relationships, real dynamics between people. So an example would be a relationship that ended badly in love, and maybe there were financial implications, and there was some kind of dynamic that maybe needs rebalancing. Or maybe it can't in real life actually get rebalanced in that concrete way, but there's an opportunity to heal the dynamic between the two people. So even if the financial situation is never fully repaired, healing can happen, but the two people have to be open to that. So if you were the injured party, it can be hard, if you were the one who didn't get the fair end of the deal, that can sit with a person and kind of fester to the point where they can never feel better about it, because they can never let go of the fact, like, I didn't get what I deserved. And it's easier to see this dynamic when you look at other people who suffer from it. It's a lot harder to see when we have it ourselves. So if you can, most people know somebody who's kind of always like a parrot, like repeating the same thing over again, like, I never got what I deserved, I never got, or that was unfair, that was so unfair, and they just get kind of stuck in that, and you can see that person is always hurting themselves over and over again by staying stuck in that. They're never allowing themselves to feel better about it by finding some different way to be around those thoughts. But we do that too. We can see it in others, but it's harder to see where in our lives we've hung on to some kind of sense of injustice, even if it's very, very true. There's, it's real, it was unjust toward you, toward me, or whatever. It's harder to see where we ourselves hang on to that and kind of prevent healing. We prevent ourselves moving forward and feeling better. We can't let it go. But I think there's a great opportunity through this Venus retrograde to let some stuff go and to feel better. It may be that you do it totally within yourself and the other party does nothing. Like, you get no apology, no extra money, no nothing from anyone else, but within you, you can let it go. If that opportunity arises for you, grab it, because you'll be better off, regardless of the other person and what they've done to you. You will be better off if you can let it go. Now, it could be that the other person in this, because there's this dynamic, there are a lot of people from the past, or a situation from the past, or one person from the past can actually come back in. Now, if somebody actually apologizes to you, so they're taking an action, it's going to be better for you if you can receive it fully. It may be hard, but I recommend trying your best to receive an apology, even if you feel like, too little, too late, and it still doesn't repair everything, I still got a raw deal. Can you see, just by listening to this, like, can you kind of get a sense that maybe you're, by hanging on to that anger, all you're doing is hurting yourself. Like, the past will never go away. That pain will never go away if you hang on to it. So if somebody apologizes, and yes, it's too little too late, yes, it's still not repairing what happened in the past, which can't fully be repaired. It's something. There's a little teeny opportunity to take a little step forward with apologies and letting it all go, which will make everybody feel better, most importantly you. But what if you're the person who took unfair advantage of someone else? I think it's highly unlikely in this case when I look at your chart, but let's say you were the person who took advantage of the other person, or you got more money in a financial exchange than you deserved, and maybe they got the wrong end of the deal. They got the raw end of the deal, and that's harder because it feels good to win. It feels good to get more sometimes, but deep down, in those situations where the other person got the raw end of the deal, even if we're glad we won and we're glad things worked out the way they did, something about sitting in that unfairness, knowing somewhere inside of us, even if we hide it from ourselves, knowing something was unfair, sits with us and weighs us down in ways that we're not always cognizant. And so, I've been saying in some of the other video clips for the other signs that if you ever read or watched A Christmas Carol, this ghost character comes back to haunt the main character. And the point of him coming back is to show the main character how what you do in life stays with you in death. Like this, each wrong deed, like in the case of the story, is like a link in this long, rattly chain, heavy chain that this ghost character has to carry around for eternity, because they never in life wanted to right the wrongs. They never wanted to let go of, the past, basically, or work to heal the situation during life. So it's hard. Like if you win a court case and you're the one who walked away with a lot of money, I'm not saying you have to go give it all back or even give half of it back, but there may be a way that you can at least recognize that you may carry some shame around how you won. And even if you're happy you won, there may be this underlying weight that you carry with you. And I don't know how you're going to make it better. Maybe you can just begin to forgive yourself and notice that it weighs on you somewhere deep inside, that it does, or consider that it might. You may not fully recognize it now, but consider that maybe there's some truth there. You could just begin being open to that idea. And then maybe if you discover that you do carry around kind of a weight around how something turned out in a relationship where maybe you left someone or walked away from something and you recognize you've done damage, and that we don't always want to look at the bad stuff that we've done. It's not pleasant. It hurts. But if you're willing to look at it and at least begin to heal, like forgive yourself so you can begin to heal yourself, maybe you'll get to a point where even with the other person that you've hurt, you can take tiny little steps toward healing what was damaged. I'm not saying the whole relationship will roar back to life, or it may not be very like a huge change, but I think you can begin to open the door to healing here. So consider that as you go through the month, like especially people float in from your past situations bubble up. Look for those opportunities of healing, at least inside of yourself. All right, have a great month. Hi Libra, welcome to March 2017. We are looking at March through the lens of Venus retrograde, and I highly recommend going back to the first 9 or 10 minutes or so and listening to the introduction, because I give more of a frame of reference for all the stuff I'm going to say now. So you get more detail and more of an idea how to listen to this if you listen to the intro. So, Venus itself has a lot of symbolism around it, and the biggies, it has to do with legal stuff. It has to do with romance. Those are the two things I'm focusing on the most because of other factors. We have Venus retrograde happening across the zodiac from Libra, and Jupiter retrograde. So there's a lot of stuff from the past coming up. It could be the recent past, or it could be further back, and it's very relationship oriented. It's very has this ring of justice and fairness and finding more balance within relationships, or even fairness concepts. So these things are swirling around us, and also in our own relationships, current relationships, but also past relationships. When you have retrogrades, especially personal planet retrogrades like Venus, stuff comes in from the past. People come in from the past. So also, because this is occurring in your 7th house partly, and in April a little bit your 6th house, very much about close business partnerships and current love relationships and past love relationships. Directly, love. Like if you were married once before, had a long-term relationship before, that something from that could bubble back up. It may bubble up within your current relationship, that issue seems to permeate and kind of get into your current relationship, something from the past. It could be that you're in a relationship now, but also something is, it could be in your psyche, like that in your mind, you're just, it's coming up inside of you. Stuff from the past is, I don't want to say troubling you, but it's just there and has to be dealt with somehow. It's coming up for a reason. I always think this stuff comes up for a reason. I think in this case it's to heal something about it. So if there's some kind of interaction between you and an ex, there's an opportunity for rebalancing and for taking at least a baby step toward healing the situation. Maybe it's not a huge step, maybe it's almost imperceptible, but it's there. Maybe it's just a willingness, like I can imagine, whereas before maybe you're like, I can never imagine forgiving that person, I can never imagine talking to that person again. Maybe now through this retrograde cycle, maybe the only step forward you make is you can now see that possibly one day you can imagine, forgiving that person. Maybe not now, maybe later, but you can imagine it. Maybe someday you can concede that maybe you can imagine talking to that person again in a civil way. So whereas before you couldn't, now you can. You don't have to do it now, but maybe you can imagine it. So this is a tiny step, but it's huge. It's also the difference between night and day. So that's the kind of opportunity we all have this month somewhere. For you, it's more directly between you and a spouse or a long-term love relationship or maybe somebody from the past. But healing, this opportunity for healing is there. Now, not everybody's going to take it, but the opportunity is there. Definitely it comes up. Stuff from the past is going to come up. Whether you heal from it or not is up for grabs, but I do think the opportunity for you, I would suggest doing as much as you can to forgive, as much personal work as you can to forgive, because I do think there's a chance it could impact your health adversely in April if you get anxious, if you're not sleeping, if you're letting it really eat you alive, because you're not if you're allowing yourself to eat yourself alive with your own thoughts of, around whatever this issue is, I would suggest letting it go and doing some forgiveness work if possible. Maybe forgiving yourself. Maybe you need to forgive yourself. So it may not be you forgiving someone else, but maybe it's you forgiving yourself for stuff you've done in the past, because that's eating you alive. You feel guilty. Guilt can eat a person alive. It's a thing we don't always see, but the person who does the wrong action, who hurts someone else, maybe they're aware of it, maybe it's on a deeper level and they don't allow themselves to see it, but it can eat a person alive when we've hurt someone else. It really is not a pleasant feeling, especially if we're aware of it. That's why people often wall it off. They don't even want to, they really do create like a psychological wall. They can't even see that they've hurt someone else because it hurts. It hurts to hurt someone else. So I don't know which position you're in. It's complicated usually, but there's this little opening here. It actually could be a big opening to begin to fix, to take steps toward, maybe they're just psychological steps forward to begin to heal this. So maybe it's not all healed now, but maybe over the next year and a half, you have an opportunity to totally change the dynamic of something. So good luck with that. I wish you all the best. Hi Scorpio, welcome to March 2017. We are looking at Venus retrograde and where that's hitting on your chart. I highly recommend going back and listening to the intro because I give you more detail and more of a frame of reference for how to take this information in, more ideas around, how it might come into your life and into the world around you. You're going to be seeing it kind of reflected. So do listen to that because I give you that information for a reason. It's to help you sort this stuff out for yourself. So let's look at where it's hitting your chart. Venus is going retrograde in Aries, which is in your 6th house. And it's corresponding, there's a lot of interaction here between your 6th and your 12th house with Jupiter retrograde there. And these are really playing off one another. You almost can't, you need to look at it as a whole unit. Also, what's going to happen in April, and we have to kind of consider what's happening, the whole cycle goes into April. Venus will dip back into your 5th house, and then it'll set off that axis of the 5th and 11th house. So let's talk about what that might mean. I definitely think here, what I, if I were working with you personally, what I would be kind of focused on and a little not concerned like it's really, really bad or anything. And actually with Venus and Jupiter, it can be whatever's happening has a little element of luck. Like even if it's about your health, it's lucky that something happened. It's lucky whatever is unfolding is lucky. So I would say here, issues from the past. They could be health issues. They could be people from the past, like friends from the past, colleagues from the past, or they could be current, but past situations. So even if the people are still in your lives, like the friends and the colleagues are still there, that nothing ended in the past, there could be situations from the past that bubble up to the surface. And they're usually things that need to be rebalanced or healed. Also for you guys, there's something for your past health, like issues in your health, realm of health and mental health from the past bubble up for healing. So the idea is they come back up again for healing and maybe finding a better way to deal with whatever this issue is. With Uranus also occupying your 6th house for so long, there's a sense of anxiety and stress that's going on, mood swings because of stress. Maybe you've been finding some good ways to deal with this, but maybe there could be even more ways to deal with, better ways. And maybe it's lucky that stuff is coming up now because you're in the right time and place and frame of mind to consider things maybe you didn't consider before, wouldn't have been open to before. Maybe for whatever condition you've got, which I think is stress-based, maybe before you would never have said, oh yeah, it's based on stress. You would have just said, no, I've got this symptom. I don't want to talk about stress. I want to talk about the symptom. I don't want to hear about alternative ways of dealing with this physical thing that I have. I want a real doctor to tell me what the real thing is. There are people like that, maybe including you, where in the past you may have been resistant to understanding that stress is at the very root of everything that's going on for you. And maybe stress-based, some modality of healing that deals with the stress is the best way to deal with the physical symptoms. And maybe now there's this opening, this opportunity to rebalance things by being a little more impartial. Maybe the doctor's more impartial. Maybe you're more impartial. You're not as fixated on it being one thing or one modality of healing. Maybe you're more open to looking at some different ways to deal with what's, I think, adding some stress in your life. So it could be that, but whatever the case, whether it's people, things that bubble up in your personal relationships, there's an opportunity for healing on a broad level here, and a great opportunity to reduce personal stress for Scorpios in particular. So I highly recommend at least hearing these thoughts and these possibilities, at least contemplating and considering that maybe this is true. You don't have to take any specific action or do anything big, but maybe consider that there's a possibility that you have stress on some level in your life. That there may, and if you consider that maybe there is some stress in your life, maybe there's a way to manage it. Not just by trying to hold it at bay, but actually changing some things in your routine to manage the stress. There's this idea that you may be very emotional about something over the coming couple of months. There's some high emotion here. It could be that if somebody comes in from the past, this makes you emotional and stresses you out. If some issue from the past or a person from the past could resurface, and suddenly it's freaking you out and it's stressing you out, and that needs to be managed on an emotional level, on a kind of, how do you manage that stress so that you feel better, you feel more balanced. How can we get you to a place of feeling more balanced? I don't know, it depends on the person. There's also an idea here, because Venus can, very easily in a person's chart, it symbolizes a person. There may be a special female in your life, or a Libra or a Taurus, who may need a little extra attention. It could be a child. So it could be a child or a romantic partner possibly, but a child for some of you needs a little extra help emotionally, or maybe there's a health issue to just attend to. Remember, so you don't get further worried or stressed, that there's an element of luck here. There's this ability to heal. So that means not just for you healing your own stress, but for this person, if it's a child, because that can make parents feel very, very stressed out. If there's any kind of health or mental health issue with a child, it's very stressful for a parent. But there's an opportunity for healing and rebalancing something. So remember that piece. Be open to the idea of healing instead of just being worried, and focused on the idea of not healing, of things being wrong. Try to switch your mental track to, there's a possibility for healing here, okay? And good luck with this month. Remember that there's the healing piece, and to breathe, and to try to find ways to reduce stress. All right, take care. Hi Sagittarius, welcome to March 2017. We are looking at Venus retrograde, which begins in March and ends in April, and kind of dominates the scene. It's interacting with other planets that are also dominating our culture and our lives right now. So I'm going to look at it, I'm taking into account all of it, but I'm looking through the lens of the Venus retrograde. And specifically, how it's opposing a Jupiter in Libra. So all these things they kind of strengthen this Venus retrograde, make it more significant. To get a better idea of what I mean by that, go back and listen to my intro. It's the first 9 or 10 minutes, because I give you a bigger frame of reference and explain in more detail some of the stuff. So that's meant to be compatible with each of these individual readings. So I recommend, if you want to understand this more about this, go listen to that. So what I'm going to talk about now is where it's hitting your chart. So for a Sagittarius, the retrograde begins in your 5th house. And by the end of the cycle, we'll have dipped back into Pisces a little bit and then move forward. So again, it's going over this very important part of a chart. It has a lot to do with beginnings and endings. My feeling about this is most of the beginning and ending stuff has been in the past, especially endings, especially bad endings. They're in the past, I think. Beginnings and endings happen on a daily basis in our lives, so there's not a big deal. But I think there maybe for this, there's a chance to heal something that happened in the past. So where is this? The 5th house has a lot to do with children. So if you started something with your child, or there was something that ended badly in the past with a child, like, who knows? It could be anything. It depends on the age of the child. Maybe you tried a certain method of disciplining or trying to manage your child's behavior, and it ended badly. This is just an example. That method of dealing with their stuff, their issues, just didn't go so well. And to the point that you feel like you really made a mistake. And hang in there. If you don't have children, I'll talk about that too. But but this is just a way to think of how this dynamic can work. Something ended badly, you made a mistake, and it may weigh on you emotionally. It may have damaged a relationship with a child or a friend, or a romantic partner, a creative partner. Something may have been damaged because of whatever way it happened. And you could be the person who was damaged more, or maybe the other person was really damaged more. You know, that's kind of a relative thing, but maybe maybe something's more clear in this case. Like, maybe something you did really was a mistake, and you recognize the other party needs more healing than maybe you do. And you feel bad about that, and you don't know what to do about that. You don't know how to get rid of the of feeling guilty. Or maybe you were the injured party. Maybe you're the child or the sibling or the friend or the romantic partner who just feels like the friendship ended badly, and you feel like you were really on the receiving end of a lot of stuff that was unfair. And you live with that. You live with that feeling of that was unfair. I was the victim. And you were, like, maybe objectively all the people around you are like, you were clearly treated unfairly. So you're not wrong, but you live with that, like, it was unfair. I was the victim. That hurts too. You carry that around with you enough, and it does damage. So what's happening over this Venus retrograde, I believe, is the reason stuff's bubbling up from the past. Either the person comes back into your world, if it's an ex-lover, romantic partner, or a friend from the past, who maybe if it was a friend, this friend felt like family. They were really close. Maybe it's a sister, maybe, or just somebody really close to you who you really clicked with. But whoever it is, there may have been something unpleasant that occurred in the past, and it could be recent past or a long time ago. And so that they literally, like, they may call you suddenly or show up or send you an email, or people start talking about them again, and then you've got all these icky feelings of either guilt because maybe you hurt someone's feelings, or you feel like you were at fault. Or maybe you feel because you're like, I never want to hear their name again. They were so mean to me. They did something wrong. But whatever the thing is, I'm not dismissing anyone's feelings, but I'm just trying to show you both sides. There's this opportunity, at least within yourself. So it may not be that between the two of you have a face-to-face moment of healing, but maybe just within yourself, you can begin to forgive yourself for what you've done in the past. By doing that, first of all, you just feel a lot better, and it releases this weight inside of you. It also begins to break down these walls of defense that we put up when we don't want to feel bad. And it opens opportunity for this mistake not to happen again in your life. So even if you can never fully repair what happened with the other person, you can't go back and change the past, maybe it won't happen again, because you've learned and you've been willing to look at it, feel the pain, forgive yourself. It kind of enables you, it's easier to go forward having forgiven yourself and not repeat. What happens when you don't forgive yourself? Some people feel like, well, I should never forgive myself because I never want to do that again. So sometimes people have this erroneous idea that if I forgive myself for that, I'll do it again. And I don't want to do that again. But a lot of people would argue that what happens when you don't forgive yourself is you're more likely to stay stuck in some kind of negative cycle. It's much better to go in and try to heal yourself and forgive yourself. It does some stuff it's a longer conversation to explain how, but it actually makes things a lot better for you and for your ability to deal with others if you can forgive yourself first. So you may have some self-forgiveness work to do. Now, if you've been injured, and whoever comes up in March and April, whatever relationship it is, family, friend, lover, whatever the relationship is, if they've wronged you and you feel like you were wronged and hurt by them, it's the same thing. You may feel like, if I forgive them, I'm saying they did the right thing. I'm making it better for them, and I don't want to make it better for them, and I don't want to pretend like what they did was right. So a lot of people don't forgive the other person because they think it's saying that what that person did was right. But really, forgiveness is very different. Forgiveness is really taking a step back internally from the victim role and being a little more impartial. And I talk a lot about this in the intro, that Venus and Libra, who are implicated here and very much active here, they really value, these energies value, or they make prominent this idea of impartial justice, blind justice, and the idea of taking a little bit of a step back. And they want, this energy wants things to be a little more balanced, and to seek, if there's been this issue of inequality in a relationship where someone was really wronged, these energies seek to balance it. And the only way sometimes that can happen is through forgiveness work. And they benefit you. So we don't want to make it, if someone really wronged you and hurt you, we're not necessarily, when I'm talking to you, I'm not trying to make it better for the other person. I'm trying to make it better for you. So if someone wronged you, it could have been a parent, somebody close to you. Somebody wronged you and you feel like they hurt you in the past. Right now I'm talking to you and I want it to be better for you. This forgiveness work you do, whether you're forgiving yourself or forgiving them, is to benefit you. So just take these ideas in. You don't have to do anything big or make any big declarations. You don't have to write a big letter or manifesto. You don't have to confront the person or do anything big like that, but just as small gestures internally. Just take in the idea of forgiveness. Whether you're forgiving yourself or the other, just open yourself to that idea. It's baby steps, baby steps. There's an opportunity here that could, it may not be immediate either. You may see it roll out over the next year and a half, this idea of healing. So ultimately the idea is to heal yourself. And maybe even the relationship. In some cases, the relationship with a child, with a parent, with a person from the past, an ex-romantic partner. There's this idea that healing can occur. It's possible. Maybe on a little micro level, but it's possible. So have a good month. Hi Capricorn, welcome to March 2017. So we're looking at this month through the lens of Venus retrograde. I recommend going back to the first 9 or 10 minutes of this whole video and listening to the overview, because I give you a lot more detail to sort of set this up and to teach you how to listen to this, how to take this in. I give you more of a frame of reference. And I do that on purpose. I don't want to have to repeat it every time because it's a lot of repetition, but go back and listen to that and to kind of help you hear this part better. So right now in this part, I'm talking about where Venus retrograde is happening. So what area of life could you expect, or areas of life can you expect to feel this more significantly or prominently? So the retrograde begins in your 4th house and kind of dips into your 3rd house. So it goes over this bottom part of your chart. And it also has a little bit to do with your 10th house area and even your midheaven and 9th house. So what does that mean? The 4th house, which is where the retrograde begins, has to do a lot with family and the past in general, and also your psychological foundations. So there's some psychological work to be done for everybody around this, for you a little more so, but it could be around family dynamics and family issues, and maybe relationships with siblings, maybe relationships with schoolmates from the past, people from the past, from school, from your neighborhood, in your family, siblings, cousins. I'm just giving you ideas for, how it ripples out. So, and these are relationships that need, one of them needs some healing. It could be with a parent, family in general, your ancestry, aunts, uncles, but close family. And there may have been a rift. So it could have been a recent rift, or it could have been a long-standing rift with somebody. So it could be between you and another person, or it may be rifts within the family, rifts within the community, rifts within the school community, school, neighborhood, town, where you came from, siblings, cousins. So family rifts or community rifts, tight community rifts. there's a chance for healing during this particular retrograde cycle. So some of the stuff could bubble up from the past. And again, it could be recent past or way back. It bubbles up again for whatever reason. It could be with one person or others. And there's a chance for healing here if people recognize it. And the way to heal it would be definitely forgiveness work. Forgiving the other, forgiving yourself if you feel like you... Sometimes we're the ones who behave badly, and it's really difficult. When we're the ones who behave badly, it's so much harder to go back in and try to fix something unless we're willing to admit what we've done and willing to apologize and take on the pain of that, because it's painful for most of us. Not everybody has... Some people wall this stuff off so they can't feel it, or some people, for whatever psychological reason, just don't see that they've done wrong. That's a very small segment of people. Most people, whether they show it to you or not, they feel that they've done something wrong, even if we don't see that. They know when they've done something wrong, and it weighs on them. And so it weighs on you, it weighs on me. If we feel we've done something wrong, it hurts. And sometimes it's hard to get past that hurt to get to the point of... Sometimes it hurts so much we're just too ashamed to even apologize. And that's tough, because we're just sitting there with that pain and we're not forgiving ourselves. We're not allowing healing to occur for the other person or for ourselves. So you could be the person who was treated badly, or you could be the person who treated someone else badly. It could be a mixed bag. But there's an opportunity for healing. That's why this is coming up. So the pain could come up too. The memories could come up that hurt. But just as much as that, there's this great opportunity for healing. And it'll make you psychologically, it'll unburden you to let some of this go. So you're either forgiving someone else and letting it go, or maybe trying to forgive yourself too. And it will be a huge release for you, and a huge moment of maturity. No matter what age you are, you could be 88 years old and mature greatly emotionally by admitting that you've done something wrong. No matter what age you are, that's a really tough thing to do. And it's also really tough, no matter what age you are, to forgive the other person if you've been severely wronged. So moments for healing, opportunities for taking even baby steps. So these don't have to be huge declarations where people have long conversations, or you don't even have to see the other person to do this kind of work. You can begin to forgive yourself and forgive the other person without even talking to them. You can just do it in here. Journal it out. It doesn't have to be some huge public display, but the healing can begin to happen. So I just say open yourself to that during the next 2 months. All right, take care. Hi Aquarius, welcome to March 2017. We're going to look at this month through the lens of the retrograde of Venus. I'm looking at the other planets too, but I'm really kind of focusing on the part of the chart where Venus is. Go back to the beginning and listen to the first 9 or 10 minutes of this whole video for the overview, because I give you a lot more detail around how to think about a Venus retrograde. So I give you more of a framework. It's easier to listen to this part and get more from it if you listen to that. So what we're doing here is we're talking about where it's hitting your chart. And for you guys, it's hitting, the Venus retrograde begins in Aries in the 3rd house, and then it's going to dip into Pisces, into your 2nd house. And it's also interacting with the opposite sides of the zodiac. So it's interacting when it begins in Aries with your 9th house, and this is where Libra sits for an Aquarius, and where because it's Libra, it's also where Jupiter is currently sitting, and Jupiter has a lot to do with what's happening in your 3rd house right now. So let's talk about what this means. There's a big legal implication for Aquarius. It could be that's your profession and you've got a lot going on there. Just a lot of activity if you're in the legal profession. If you're political at all, there's a lot going on there. But this is also where people go to school and learn. It's where people teach. So you could be the teacher, you could be the student, you could be both. But this is also a big area for learning. So themes around that stuff. You could even have children going off to school, and these themes would be playing out there. If you have children, I would say it's about them going to school, stuff going on with them, but it's also about you personally. So we have to think of sometimes the dual nature, or the many layers that, astrology can speak to. It's not just one thing. So you could have a child going off to school or in school, and there are issues around that. You could be a teacher in a school, and there are issues, but there are also other things. So maybe you're a teacher and there's a legal case, or you're a teacher and you have a child going to school, or some combination of all this stuff. Or maybe you're a writer. You could be a writer, or somehow in communications, learning how to use your voice in a written way, in a spoken way, and there are issues around that. So if you're a writer and you're communicating, the issue is around balance, and there's a need for paying attention to fairness, justice, and balance if you're any kind of communicator. Whether you're a writer or not, or a speaker or not, if you're a politician or a professor or a journalist, or somehow communicate ideas to other people, you communicate ideas to other people. There's this idea of considering fairness, justice, and balance within these communications. Sometimes it's two parties communicating with one another, so there's this issue of the two, and I don't mean necessarily like, if you're in the United States, you may think I'm speaking to political parties, but by parties, I mean between two individuals or two camps, two groups. There's this idea of the communication getting out of balance, or maybe people are communicating about the ideas of fairness and justice, that maybe that's what's being discussed. So maybe it's a classroom, maybe it's a general theme, maybe it's a political theme, maybe it's within whatever you do. What's on the table is fairness and justice. And how do we bring this about? How do we consider this? Maybe a review needs to take place. Was this fair? Was this just? Is this balanced? What's in the best interest of all when you're dealing with, the ninth and the 11th house by extension? This is where I'm looking at other planets. What's in the best interest of all is fairness and justice, and in particular blind justice, impartial justice. Is this truly happening, or is there partiality happening here? So if you're in a court case, there's this idea of, is the judge really being fair? Is the judge impartial here? If you're in a classroom, is the professor being impartial, or are they like playing favorites? If you're the professor, are you just like some students better than the others? When you're communicating an idea, are you really looking at all the sides so you can get the best, most comprehensive view of the topic? Stuff like that. And this can be swirling around you. There's also, if it's about communications between two people who are close, like maybe you and a partner, you and somebody, like an individual. It's the same rules, the same concepts there. Like, are people being fair? Are they using their higher mind so they can get to a place of higher, like a higher road, taking a higher view so that it's not all emotional and reactionary? Like sometimes when you're talking to another person, it could be a spouse, it could be just any other person within your family, at work, anywhere. Are you using your higher mind to really to use the mind at its highest level? Or are you being very reactionary and emotional? Those are the kinds of questions that come up, and this is a time during this retrograde to really review this and maybe rebalance some things that have gotten whacked out of balance. This is a time to maybe review how balanced everything is, and can we get back to a better place of communicating. That's what's happening in the life of Aquarius. So good luck. Hi Pisces, welcome to March 2017. We are looking at this month through the lens of the Venus retrograde, and I highly recommend that you go back and listen to the first 9 or 10 minutes of the whole video. This is where I do the overview, and I give you a lot more information to kind of understand what I'm saying now. So they kind of go together, and I do them that way, so I give you more information in the beginning. I don't have to keep repeating that same information to give you the overview. So go back and listen to that so you can understand maybe more about what I'm saying now. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm going through the zodiac and showing you where the retrograde happens. So for you, the retrograde begins in your 8th house, and then it dips back. I'm sorry, not the 8th house. I'm looking at where Libra is. Excuse me. So it does impact your 8th house. It begins in your 2nd house, the retrograde. It's pinging off of Jupiter in your 8th house. And so this financial cross-section of your chart is implicated. This is also an area of marriage and the spouse, sexual relations versus financial relations. So sometimes these things are intertwined in very complicated ways. Sexual relations, power dynamics, and sexual dynamics. Those are all intertwined sometimes. So it could be about work and how you work for money and how money comes to you. It could be between two people in a close relationship. So the retrograde begins in your 2nd house, implicating your 8th, and then it dips back into your 1st house. It dips into Pisces a little bit. So it kind of brings in, once again, it really implicates this interpersonal dynamic, maybe with a spouse or an ex. So during the months of March and April, issues to do with past dynamics within a current relationship and or a past love interest, the issues from that past relationship bubble into your present and maybe impact a current relationship, or maybe that relationship comes back up to review. Definitely comes back up somehow. Sometimes it's just psychologically. So this relationship could be in love, but also at work, or maybe both. And maybe there's some kind of money issue too. I don't know, but the idea here is that maybe something in the past was out of balance. Maybe if something ended badly, it ended badly because something was out of balance. Like one person may have treated somebody else unfairly, or maybe they didn't. Maybe it just, for one party, one individual, the repercussions were so much worse. And then for the other person, they weren't really that bad, and they didn't get burned as badly, whether it was financially or in love. And so there was a little bit of an imbalance there, or maybe a big imbalance. And so the people involved in that are walking around with the result of that. You know, the person who feels victimized and like life gave them a raw deal is carrying that around perhaps still. And then the person who kind of walked away unscathed, unscratched, knows the other person did not. The other person was hurt more badly. That can weigh the person down who walked away so seemingly unscathed. Maybe over time there's this guilt that sets in, this feeling like, I don't like the way that happened. That can weigh the winning person, the person who walked away seemingly fine, can actually inside, it's like eating them alive. That could be you, or maybe it's the other person. I don't know. It could be, that's why I'm describing both dynamics. But what there's an opportunity for here in the month of March and through April is it comes back up for review, I think, so that some healing has the opportunity to occur. Now, sometimes we can just within ourselves, we don't even have to come face to face to the other person or write to them. There doesn't have to be some huge event that changes things. Sometimes it's just inside of us. If we need to forgive the other party so that we can release all the the old bad feeling. Sometimes if we can just do some internal work to forgive the other party so we can kind of let it go. Maybe that's what needs to begin to happen. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. It's not easy to forgive, but it's possible. So this possibility comes up for review here. Can you forgive? Also, if you're the person who feels that you've done something that you're just not that proud of, you wish you hadn't, or whatever, that's been weighing on you. Can you forgive yourself Maybe it doesn't happen overnight. Maybe you're like, I don't deserve forgiveness. Or if I forgive myself, I might do it again. That's oftentimes what people fear, that they'll be let loose to do something bad again if they forgive themselves. Forgiveness is not about whether something did or didn't happen or will or won't happen. It's more the psychological state that releases you from your past and allows you to heal. It's really more about self-healing. So if you can begin to forgive yourself, arguably that's a good thing for you. And I would recommend at least being open to the idea during this time frame. So you'll see issues of imbalance and fairness coming up for review in finance, in close relationships. And this opportunity for forgiveness is there. Not everyone's going to take it, but it's there. So have a great month. I wish you all the best.